The rarest sound in our world today is silence. The moment we get in our car, we turn on the radio. Come into our home, we flip on the television. We get off a plane, there's music. Get on an elevator, there's music. I once asked a stewardess, is there any reason you start playing that music as soon as the engines are turned off and the doors are open on the plane? She said, oh, sir, people can't stand silence. Really? Really? What an indictment. The choir sang the text from Psalm 46:10, which begins with the Hebrew word stop. Stop. And know that I am God. No one ever discovered who God is while talking. No great thought ever came without the presence of silence. No mind was ever deepened without the luxury of solitude. Silence. So for a moment or two, let's obey the command. I would urge you before the summer has run its course that you commit to memory the single verse, Psalm 46:10. Its ending is as beautiful as its beginning, and I'll leave that for you to discover. But it will remind you of the importance of it. I know you have a lot to do. I know. I understand. I really do. Busy? It's my middle name. And I've said for years that Cynthia's epitaph ought to read, I didn't finish. She is forever in projects, and the reason I know it is I am also forever engaged in something. Not bad things, wonderful things, but not silent things. So perhaps through the summer you will grow deeper by becoming familiar with the unusual sound of silence. Teach your children that, your grandchildren. Now we're looking at two different sections of Scripture, one in the Old Testament, Psalm 127, and one in the New Testament, 1 Thessalonians chapter 2. You will also find in your worship folder an outline, if you haven't already. It will guide our thoughts as we think through the pleasant subject of delighting in our children. I'll confess I've never once heard a message on this subject. And I've been in church a long time. And nobody loves preaching more than I do. I've never heard a pastor speak on delighting in our children. Want to do that today? May we stand for the reading of the Scriptures. Psalm 127 to begin with, and then 1 Thessalonians 2. Psalm 127, verse 3, Behold, children are a gift of the Lord, the fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior, so are the children of one's youth. How blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They shall not be ashamed when they speak with their enemies in the gate. 1 Thessalonians 2, verse 5. For we never came with flattering speech, as you know, nor with a pretext for greed. God is witness. Nor did we seek glory from men, either from you or from others, even though as apostles of Christ, we might have asserted our authority, but we proved to be gentle among you as a nursing mother tenderly cares for her own children. Having so fond an affection for you, we were well pleased to impart to you not only the gospel of God, but also our own lives, because you had become very dear to us. For you recall, brethren, our labor and hardship, how working night and day, so as not to be a burden to any of you, we proclaim to you the gospel of God. You are witnesses, and so is God. How devoutly and uprightly and blamelessly we behaved toward you believers, just as you know how we were exhorting and encouraging and imploring each one of you as a father would his own children, so that you would walk in a manner worthy of the God who calls you into his own kingdom and glory. Stand there for a moment. Look again. Look at the bookends. Verse 7, as a mother. Verse 11, as a father. Today we're addressing a subject I have never, ever heard addressed in a church: delighting in our children. The good news is that God delights in us. You see, the church is a family. We're not made up of bosses and employees. People who continue to act up aren't fired from a church. They're disciplined. That's a home term. We're brothers and sisters. We're not fellow workers. We're moms and dads and sons and daughters. We're a family. How valuable it is that the family delight in each other. Delight. And so, dear Father, teach us something of the joy of family life. In a time in which it is fast being removed from our country, may we become reacquainted with what it means to delight in our children, to find pleasure, favor in them, and they in us. Teach us as men and women, boys and girls, brothers and sisters, that we serve a great and good Father who cares for his own. May today make a difference, because we will be instructed from the Word of God. Please, Father, please slow us down. Please deliver us from the feeling that if we miss one panel of a revolving door, we will have missed our moment. Please show us that what is good takes time to cultivate. And what is deep takes hours, sometimes days, sometimes years. Give us a sense of quiet confidence that when you speak, it's time for us to be quiet. And show us, our Father, as parents and grandparents and great-grandparents and aunts and uncles and sisters and brothers, the importance of delighting in those around us, not just tolerating them. And as you do that, Lord, show us again that you delight in us, your children. ornery and wayward and stubborn as we are, you delight in us. Out of gratitude, we give our gifts now. In the name of your Son, our Savior and brother, Jesus the Christ. Everyone said, amen. You may be seated. Several years ago, my wife and I had a Bible class in our home. We chose 8 other couples who were our age at that time. We were young couples, all of us with young children, some who had just given birth, others who were underway with getting them into school. So we were all about the same age and stage in life. We all went to the same church that I pastored, and we all had the same desire. We wanted to know, what is it God says about the home, the family? How do you deal with children? How do you handle situations when you run out of your own wisdom and you need guidance from God? It was a wonderful 11, 12 weeks together where we listened to, back then we called it tapes. We listened to tape recordings, and we would always have a discussion following that, and in the process, we got to know each other very well. It occurred to me 3/4 the way along in that Bible class that a question was appropriate. And so I asked them if they would be willing to do something just for our group. And I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to think back to your original home. Okay? Back when you were a kid, you were growing up, whoever raised you, think back and answer the question, was it a fun place to be? Would you say that your home was truly a happy home? Think about it. And as I said to the class, I want you to lift your hand if that's true. Out of 16 young adults, 2 hands went up, one of them reluctantly. I've been a bit haunted by the memory of that since then. It happened, long time ago. But I still remember most who didn't raise their hands simply looked down. Some had tears. I didn't probe. I wasn't there for that purpose. Certainly didn't want to humiliate or embarrass anyone. But I found it interesting that barely 2 out of 16 raised their hands. I won't ask you today to display in any way your answer, but was your home a fun place to be? Was it really a happy home? When you think back, are the pleasant memories far more in number than the painful ones? Because we are not revealing the answer with a raised hand, I'm left only to surmise, and I will add here that based on about 50 years of ministry, I would say the great majority of you would not have your hand raised. Some come with horrible memories, abuse, brutality, unfair treatment, neglect, oversight, anger, outbursts of temper, throwing things, cursing, fighting. On and on the list goes. But the picture portrayed in the scriptures isn't like that. We're missing it. Our parents, as good as they were, unless you were very unusual, missed it. They missed it. And I think that is tragic. Heartbreaking, really. Because I realize most of us were raised by good people. Good people. And when we were born into their family, most of them were pleased to have us join the group. Some in large numbers and some only children, or maybe you only have one sibling. The real question is, did you feel that your mother and dad really delighted in you? Just delighted in you. And they not only said so, they demonstrated it. What a valuable goal for all of us. And if not now rearing children, if you are a parent, you quite likely are by now a grandparent. And what a great thing to begin there, to delight in your grandchildren. What I'm really asking is, did you feel deep joy? And was it truly regretful when you had to leave home? To go off to school, or to join hands in marriage, or serve in the military? Without trying to analyze why, that's not my expertise, and that really isn't my interest. I just simply want to state the fact that it is never too late to start doing it right. There's always hope in Christ. Which is why we met as couples. We thought, since there were so many memories that we wish we could erase, maybe we can start building new ones that we will never have to erase. Because I've never heard a message on this subject, and because I have never delivered one, I decided I would just go back to basics, and that would be starting with words. And to my surprise, I found a number of words in both Old and New Testament that reveal delighting in children, delighting in the family. The actual word, it appears in that way, appears in Proverbs 3, verse 12, which is a place I'd like us to start. We'll go elsewhere, so we'll let your fingers do the walking through the white pages today. We'll go from one section to another, so just move right along with us. I wish it were all in one chapter and one section, but it's not. So we'll go from one to another and point out the words that portray a happy home. Proverbs 3, verse 12. For whom the Lord loves, he reproves, even as a father corrects the son in whom he delights. Look at that. Delights. It's an interesting old Hebrew word. Ratzah is the term. It means to find favor in. Elsewhere, it refers to acceptance, even enjoyment. A father enjoying the child. What a great thought. In fact, this very verse is repeated in Hebrews 12. Go there next. The writer to the Hebrews decided that he would quote from Proverbs 3 to make his point when he is dealing with the issue of disciplines in life. And he is very well acquainted with his Bible, the Old Testament, and so he draws probably from memory something he learned maybe in the synagogue, in early training, perhaps from his own parents. He draws from Proverbs 3. In verse 5 of chapter 12 of Hebrews, we read, My son, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, nor faint when you are reproved by him. Keep reading. For those whom the Lord loves, he disciplines. And he scourges every son whom he receives. There's the word. but he doesn't render it delights in. He uses the word receive. And in this case, it isn't Hebrew, it's Greek. It's the word paradekomai. Dekomai is the word for welcoming. Welcoming. When you put the prefix para with it, it means to welcome with favor, with delight. In fact, it was used in extra-biblical literature for welcoming a soldier home from battle, welcoming an Olympic athlete back from the games. Welcome home, welcome back. It's a word used for the citizen who returns to the home and the homeland with great joy. Years ago, my good friend George Rutenbar recently passed in the Lord's presence, but back then he was Dr. Walvoord, John Walvoord's assistant at Dallas Seminary. Dr. Walvoord was the president of Dallas Seminary for 34 years. And what a grand man. Dutch, strong-hearted, disciplined. Dr. Walvoord. Nobody called him John. In fact, George said George was his assistant and said to me on one occasion, you know, when Dr. Walvoord was born, his mother held him, little baby, in her arms and said, welcome to our world, Dr. Walvoord. Isn't that a great line? Welcome to my world, sweetheart. Welcome to our home, darling. Welcome to the family. Welcome. You're wanted. We love having you as a part of us. In fact, the psalmist states that the children are a gift of the Lord. That the fruit of the womb, I've always loved that line, the fruit of the womb is his reward. Reward. When he blesses you after 9 months of waiting with the birth of a little baby, the gush of birth, and all the excitement that comes with it, God says, I'm rewarding you. I'm gifting you. Take delight in this gift. Welcome to our home. Welcome to our family. Turn from Hebrews 12 to Ephesians 5. It gets even more intriguing. Love studies like this. Ephesians 5, verse 29, refers to a person on his own who is wholesome and healthy in his thinking. I'll show you why I say that in a moment. Ephesians 5:29 reads, no one ever hated his own flesh. But you know what? Some do, which is what leads to suicide. So I think it's helpful to understand what he's saying is that no one who is healthy ever hates his own flesh. You've noticed when a person falls into depression that they hate themselves. It's a black hole. Before long, they become disheveled. They don't care what they're wearing. They don't pay attention to their hair or their face or the hygienical needs of the body. Sometimes they don't bathe or shower. They often pull their blinds and stay away from others because they're convinced nobody wants to be near them. They hate their flesh. They hate themselves. This is referring to someone, however, who is wholesome, healthy, has a good self-image. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes it and cherishes it, just as Christ also does the church. What does that person do with himself? Look closely. He nourishes and cherishes his flesh. See the word nourish, ektrepo. Trepo means to bring, ek means out. When you put that prefix in front of that verb, treko, it's the idea of bringing something out, drawing it out from within. Now, that's a person on his own, but look at chapter 6, verse 4, where it refers to a child. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but ektrepho them. There's the same word as found in verse 29. But bring them out Draw from what's within them. Observe what's there and draw it out. You know, sweetheart, the older you get, the more I realize you're very good with your art. You're very gifted. Or, you know, son, I notice as we play ball together, you can really catch that ball. You're ahead of those that are your age, and I'm really proud of your ability to do that. Let's see if this goes somewhere. Let's see if we can do this together a little more. And you begin to draw out the skill. You know, hon, I've observed you're very well coordinated. There's a gymnastics class at school that would be just terrific for you to be a part of. Wouldn't it be fun to be on the gymnastics team? Or maybe you have a pool and you notice your child begins to swim and swims well. You say, you know what? We can go somewhere with this. Now, you don't think he's going to make me a lot of money because he's going to be an Olympic star. You think how great it will be that they will find such satisfaction in perfecting their skills. To ektrepho is to draw them out, and it's all in the idea of nourishment. There's a proverb, chapter 20, verse 5. I just quickly go back to it because I want you to see it also. It carries the same idea, chapter 20, verse 5. A plan in the heart of a man is like deep water, but a man of understanding draws it out. I've seen fathers take time with their children, drawing them out. What is it that's troubling you? What is it you're afraid of? You delight in your children when you seek to know those things. Do you realize, sweetheart, that God has gifted you in a certain way? I want to help you cultivate that. I want you to develop that gift because who knows how the Lord may wish to use you someday. Came across a wonderful, sweet story of a man named Benjamin West, a British artist. West tells how he first became aware of his artistic skills and talent. One day, Benjamin's mother went out, leaving him in charge of his little sister, Sally. In his mother's absence, Benjamin noticed some bottles of colored ink. And to amuse her, he began to paint Sally's portrait on a big piece of paper. In the process, he made quite a mess of things and spilled numerous splotches of ink here and there while painting his sister. When his mother returned, she saw all the mess and said nothing about it. Deliberately, she looked beyond all that and picked up the piece of paper on which he had done the drawing. She paused, smiled, and said, "Why, it's Sally. How beautiful." And then she stooped to kiss her son tenderly. From that time on, Benjamin West told many others, "My mother's kiss made me an artist." There's a mother who delighted in her son. Now, if you're a neatnik, you're going to have trouble with that. Some women are such perfectionists, when their husbands get up at night to go to the bathroom, they make the bed, you know. You're going to have to get past all of that. Why? Because kids are messy. Kids are messy. And if you're not careful, you say, don't drag all that dirt in here. You've been out there. But you forget the flowers he planted. If you're not careful, you'll just see the mess. You'll see the stuff that troubles you, and you'll miss drawing out from them what's going on. And if you were to just delight in them, you'd sweep the dirt out of the way and go to enjoy the flowers and tell them what a beautiful job you've done. How gifted you are. I noticed as you do your homework, you are really good in math. Wow. That makes me so proud of you to think that you can think like this. And I had trouble in math, and I really respect the fact that you get it. It's terrific. My brother was really good in math, and my sister was really bad in math. So my mother and dad paid my brother to tutor my sister in math. It was one of the shortest employments ever in the history of the family. He said to her on one occasion, "You are impossible." She responded, "I hate you." Well, a lot of relationships going there in the family. Same time, we had a lot of fun together. My brother was brilliant in math. My sister is incredibly gifted as an artist. Beautiful handwriting. I mean, when she gives you a gift, you don't want to open it. The wrapping is the gift. Good night. How'd she do that? She has a room in her home for just wrapping gifts. Think of that. I wrap ours in the garage on the way from the grocery bag. We all have our stuff down inside. We need someone to draw it out. Now, we're right here in a great verse. Look at this word, instruction. See, chapter 6, verse 4. Fathers, don't tick off your children, bring them to anger, but rather ektrepho them in the discipline and instruction. That's a different word entirely. Instruction is this word. It's nouthesia. It's from the word nous, which is the mind. Nouthesia is the word that means to put into the mind. In fact, Walter Bauer, in his outstanding lexicon, defines the word, this is counsel about avoidance or cessation of an improper course of conduct. Big words that say warning. When you delight in your child, you warn them. It is a warning done in love. You know, honey, I notice as you're getting older that your mom and I need to talk with you about some things that you're going to be facing with boys in the whole area of the sexual life. We need to warn you about things because it's such a marvelous thing God has given us. But I need to warn you, not everybody treats it like it's marvelous. They make it nasty. And here's why. When you delight in your child, you instruct the child. Your child discovers soon that you care when you take time, even if it's to sit down and push the dishes aside and say, this is a good time for me to help you understand something. I need to warn you about this. It just occurs to me that you're missing this, and I've never really instructed you in it. That's the word instruction of the Lord. Nourishment at its best includes bringing out what is within and also warning those times when they get beyond proper boundaries. You instruct them as they learn to drive. You warn them about speeding. You warn them about the signals. You warn them about other drivers. You warn them about the lanes. Why? Because you care. You don't want them hurt. And you remind them, too, that there are those who drink and drive. And they are treacherous when they're on the highway. And they will kill you. So you've got to drive defensively. This is all instruction out of delight. Were you properly warned about sex in your growing up years? Was it modeled for you in such a way that you didn't have to learn about it in the streets? Because it's always dirty when you learn it there. Did your mom and dad care enough to take you aside and talk to you about all of that? I have a good friend named Bob who said of his own rearing of his son, he said, you know, our son reached the age where I realized I needed to talk to him about sex. I didn't know how to do it. My dad had never done that with me, but I thought, I need to really warn him. So I need to explain it to him. So we went into his room and closed the door, and I got out a notebook. So I started through, and I filled up this page. Then we went to that page. I drew pictures. Then I went to this page, and I did that, and I went there. So about 2 hours later, I finished, and I said, do you have any questions? He said, no, Dad. I think you've answered every question I'll have for the rest of my life. Are you going to? You know why he did? Because he delights in him. A warning isn't a rebuke. A warning is there's a boundary here for a reason. Find out why there was a fence put there. Find out why God says, thou shalt not. He certainly wasn't desirous of making us miserable. Now, go from Ephesians to 1 Thessalonians. Love this letter. 1 Thessalonians is a letter written to the people of Thessalonica by Paul after spending just a little bit of time there. If you want to know what that was like, you got to read Acts 17, 1-9. It'll tell you about his time in Thessalonica. Wasn't long at all, just a matter of weeks. Once he scoots and is on his way to other involvement in ministry, he pauses along the way and he writes them a letter remembering what life was like when he was among them. If you're a pastor, a former pastor, if you've known the joy of shepherding a flock, then you can understand the words that appear beginning at verse 5 of 1 Thessalonians 2. These are words of a shepherd to a congregation. Makes my heart beat faster to read them. There are times that you are just overwhelmed with the joy of a memory of a previous congregation. You take delight in the ones you're serving now, but you look back and you remember the good things that happened and the wonderful occasions that brought into your life and into their lives. Paul's doing that here, beginning at verse 5. He says to them in 1 Thessalonians 2, verse 5, well, we never came with flattering speech, as you know, nor with a pretext for greed. God is witness. Isn't it wonderful when you have a pastor who isn't greedy, who doesn't flatter? Isn't it wonderful to be around people who genuinely tell you, honestly express their gratitude for you without you're feeling like they're reaching in your hip pocket, or they've got some other motive in mind? Paul says, I never spent time with you looking for your money. I didn't come with flattering speech to tell you what you wanted to hear. Paul said, I didn't do that. You don't do that when you delight in someone. I didn't come with flattering speech or with a pretext for greed. God is witness. In fact, I didn't seek glory from men, either from you or from others, even though as an apostle of Christ, I might have asserted my authority. Do you think? I reckon he's an apostle, for goodness sake. But Paul never showed up going, I am an apostle. Stand up when I walk in the room. He didn't do that. He just showed up. He just served them. He just disarmed them with his grace and kindness. We could have asserted our authority, but we never did. We never reminded you that we had had a relationship with Christ that few people would ever have. Now read on. But there's the particle of contrast. But, not that, but we proved to be gentle among you. Here's where it gets good. We proved to be gentle among you as a nursing mother tenderly cares for her children. Look at that. Not just a mother, but a mother with thalpo, T-H-A-L-P-O. It means to heat, to warm. It's the tender picture of a mother with a newborn at her breast. Get this. She's wrapped the baby in a warm, soft blanket. She's just put a fresh diaper on him. And she's pulled the child up close. And she's holding him in such a way that his head rests. And then she pulls him to her breast. And she warms him. Isn't that fabulous? There was a while when one of our daughters was living with us as they were in transition in their home. And she had just given birth to one of her children. We were living in California at the time. We had a stairway that led down to the family room, and I didn't know anyone was up. I got up real early, and I walked down the stairs, and I saw a light, very, very dimly lit, and there was our Colleen with her little baby. And I felt like I was walking into some sacred place. And she held that baby in her arms and was nursing him. And I slipped away and sat up on the top step. She never knew I'd done this. And I thanked God for the tenderness of her touch. But this really isn't about a mother nursing a child. This is about you delighting in yours, warming them, comforting them. It's an old word that on occasion is translated cherish. I wish we still use that word. Usually only use it at wedding ceremonies. And you never remember what you say at wedding ceremonies. And that's too bad, because cherish is such a great word. It's tactile. You feel cherished. In fact, you'll be interested to know that over in the Old Testament, when it was translated into Greek, called the Septuagint, big word, meaning the Greek Old Testament, when this word, thalpo, is translated there in Deuteronomy, it's a picture of a mother hen sitting on her eggs. Wouldn't you love it? Fluffed out there, keeping her eggs what? Warm. And then when the chicks pop out of the eggs and they're just old enough to be dangerous, she's got her big wings out, holding them. The same word, thalpo. It's the word for seeing value in. I care about each one of you little chicks. Don't go too far. We used to live down near the Cooper Clinic, and if you're down there, you know one of the great road signs is a road sign of ducks. It's the only time I remember seeing a road sign with a mother duck and little ducklings behind her. Meaning, slow down, you klutz. There's ducks walking across the road. And so the ducks are all over that little lake down there where Cooper runs his joint. And I probably shouldn't call it a joint. It's a great clinic, but anyway. If you knew how much I held back right now, you'd be so proud of me. You know. Anyway, I was riding to our home, and a mother duck was walking across the road. I mean, she could have moved a little faster, but she was just like hanging out. And you know what she was doing the whole time? Looking back. Get up here. Get. And one back in the back, I knew exactly how he felt. I am so tired of walking in a line, I could scream, you know. All the while I'm sitting, I might as well turn my engine off. Gonna let the ducks walk across here. Why? Because that mother cares for her ducklings. Because she delights in them. They're her charge. She's watching over them. The Lazy Bee Ranch is comprised of 260 square miles of scrub brush on the New Mexico-Arizona border and has been in the Day family since 1881. When Harry and Ada Mae Day were ready to have their first child, they traveled 200 miles to El Paso for the delivery, and Ada Mae brought her baby Sandra home to a difficult life. The 4-room adobe house had no running water and no electricity. There was no school within driving distance. One would have thought that with such limited resources, Sandra's intellectual future was slim. Not on your life. Harry and Ada Mae were dreamers who did not allow themselves to be limited by their surroundings. Harry had been forced by his father's death to take over the ranch rather than enter Stanford University, but he never gave up hope that his daughter would someday study there. And Ada Mae continued to subscribe to metropolitan newspapers and to magazines like Vogue and The New Yorker. When Sandra was 4, her mother started her on the Calvert method of home instruction and later saw that she went to the best boarding school possible. Sandra's brother Alan says that one summer their parents picked him up, packed them into a car, and they drove to all the state capitals west of the Mississippi. Think of that. We climbed up to the dome of every building until finally we got back home, said Alan. Sandra did go to Stanford, then on to law school, and eventually to become the first woman Supreme Court Justice in the United States of America. On the day of her swearing in, the Day family was there, of course. During the ceremony, Alan watched her closely as Sandra put on her robe, walked to her seat among the justices. She looked around and saw the family and locked her eyes right into ours, said Alan. That's when the tears started falling. What causes a woman like Sandra Day O'Connor to go so far? Intelligence? Well, of course. Lots of inner drive, yes, but much of the credit goes to a determined little ranch woman sitting in her adobe house at night, reading hours on end to her children, and to parents scampering the stairways of Capitol domes with their children in tow. Those are parents that delight in their children. When you plan your vacation, don't just look for a place you want to go. Talk to the kids. Ask them where they would like to be. In fact, think of stretching things where you do things that they wouldn't have thought of, and you explain to them why and how this will help them later in life. They learn from that. My goodness, Mom and Dad really care about us. They don't know the meaning of Falpo, but they sure do know when they're being warmed and cared for. In fact, fast forward to verse 11, just as you know how we were exhorting and encouraging and imploring each one of you as a father would his own children. I've always loved this passage. As a mother, as a father. This bookend, that bookend. A mother is known for warming, but look at what a father is known for. Sounds just like a dad. Exhorting, encouraging, and imploring. Oh, brother. Sounds like lecture number 738, doesn't it? Nope, it has nothing to do with any of those things you're thinking. Let me broaden your understanding with these three words. The first one, exhort, get this, is from a term that means to treat someone in a congenial manner, to be inviting, to speak in a friendly way, to show respect with our words. Oh, Dad, listen to me. Haven't you criticized long enough? Haven't you found the moment to locate what was wrong enough? When they mow the grass and miss the spot, isn't it time to overlook the spot and brag on them for the mowed grass? Come on. When you do that, you treat them in a congenial and friendly way. They learn that you delight in them. See the next word? Encouraging. This is the word that means to cheer up, even to console. Remember the last time your child showed up with tears? What was your response? You know, a child can't eat while the child is crying. So why do you force feed them? Something far more important than eating their food that evening, and that's you taking time to find out what's broken their heart. You do that when you delight in them. And not just dads, but mothers as well. So easy to just get so task-oriented that it's just, like slinging food at them 3 times a day. Just eat and do something. No. See the last word, imploring? The term means to affirm. I love that word. To support them in a manner that encourages them, to affirm them. We acknowledge events that have been accomplished. We affirm people. Great job. Wow. Look how you brought your grades up. This is terrific. Yeah, I know you'd love to make all A's, but I never made all A's. It's okay. I bet you did your best. Now, this is a subject that you're having struggles in. How can I help you with that? Because I want you to do well in all of them, because you've got that ability. You see the difference? You're saying the same thing, but you're saying a little differently. Dads, moms, can I have your attention right now? Isn't it time that you paid closer attention to the amount of time you're spending with your children? Isn't it time for you to think seriously about that? And not just fill up the extra time with an extra job. Or just looking for your favorite chair when the evening comes, but rather what they would like to do that evening. Isn't it about time that the words you spoke to your children were words of courtesy? How rare children hear parents say, I'm sorry. I spoke too quickly. I apologize. Please forgive me. They will never take advantage of you when you are that vulnerable. I speak from experience. And the confidence that you show in your children, isn't it about time you turn the tables on all of this and talk about how well they drive? Or how nicely they did the dishes? Or how much better they're keeping their room? And if I may add one more, bring a little laughter, bring a little joy in the home, okay? Dads from Texas can be horrible. I am the daddy. You got that? I'm the father. You show me respect. You know, if you have to demand respect, you don't deserve it. Furthermore, it won't make them give it to you. You earn respect. And they will just fall all over you if you've earned it. It's essential if you delight in your child that you spend time with that child regardless of the age. It's essential that the words you say to your children are words of courtesy and kindness and respect. It's essential that the confidence you have in your children is communicated to them. You can do that, son. Why, you've got the ability to make that happen. When your boy is now an adult and he's on his way in life and maybe married with children and comes to you with an idea, your task, because you delight in him, is to say, go for that. We're right here praying with you and for you. You give discernment, you give counsel, but you are there to encourage them on their way. Speaking of laughter, I want the kids to remember me as a guy that was fun to be with. I really do. It's easy for preachers to be remembered as a guy that preached at home just like he preached at church. You know, I want them to remember me as the guy that threw their mother in the pool and lived to tell the story. Throwing her in the pool is no big deal. Living to tell the story is a big deal. How great it is to see a dad with his head thrown back, laughing out loud with one of his children. How valuable that laughter can be. Maybe it's overdue. Don't take it as simply a reproof or rebuke. Take it as an encouragement. Bring laughter back into your life. Include your children in it. You come across a funny story, email it to one of your kids. You find out something that's rather humorous in life, well, I can't wait to call up one of my kids and tell them about it. You'll never believe what I saw today. I want them, when they remember me, to remember the laughter in the hallways and in the walls and in the pictures. I don't want them to remember a frowning, shouting preacher. I want them to remember a daddy who absolutely adored them, took delight in them, encouraged them to laugh. I want them to miss the fun of being with their daddy. Speaking of which, I want to quote from my favorite theologian, Irma Bombeck. In church the other Sunday, I was intent on a small child who was turning around smiling at everyone. He wasn't gurgling, spitting, humming, kicking, tearing the hymnals, or rummaging through his mother's handbag. He was just smiling. Just smiling. Finally, his mother jerked him about in a stage whisper that could be heard in a little theater off Broadway. And she said, "Stop that grinning. You're in church. With that, she gave him a belt, and as the tears rolled down his cheeks, added, "That's better," and returned to her prayers. We sing, "Make a joyful noise to the Lord," while our faces reflect the sadness of one who has just buried a rich aunt who left everything to her pregnant hamster. We chant, "If I have not charity, I become a sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal." Translated in the parking lot, it comes out, "Same to you, fella!" Suddenly I was angry. It occurred to me the entire world is in tears, and if you're not, you better get with it. I wanted to grab this child with a tear-stained face close to me and tell him about my God, the happy God, the smiling God, the God who had to have a sense of humor to have created the likes of us. I wanted to tell him he's an understanding God. He understands the little children who pick their noses in church because they're bored. I love that line. He understands the man in the parking lot who reads the comics while his wife is attending church inside. He understands that. He even understands my shallow prayers that implore, "Lord, if you can't make me thin, then make my friends look fat." He understands that. I wanted to tell this kid, I've taken a few lumps in my time for daring to smile at religion. By tradition, one wears faith with the solemnity of a mourner, the gravity of a mask of tragedy, and the dedication of a Rotary badge. What a fool, I thought. Here was a woman sitting next to the only light left in our civilization, the only hope, our only miracle, our only promise of infinity. If he couldn't smile in church, where was there left to go? Well, as you can tell, I'm not through, but I'll be back. Let's bow our heads. Soul-searching time for all of us. Believe me, I've lived with this message long enough to feel deeply convicted. I would ask nothing of you that I would not ask of myself. So while you're sitting there thinking through where you've been, what you're making of your home and family, realizing that someday they'll remember you and either lift their hands or not when asked, "Was yours a happy home where you grew up?" Hey, it's never too late to start doing what's right. It all begins with a sincere faith in the Son of God who loved you and gave himself for you. Please, trust him. Even if it's for the first time in your life, trust him. Thank you, dear Father, for being such a good dad. And thank you for loving us in such a tender and consistent and faithful and even enjoyable way. You just disarm us with how good you are, even when we've been ornery and stubborn, and stupid. Thanks for never walking out of our lives. Father, thank you for your love and your delight, your understanding, your grace, your mercy, new every single morning. Thank you for being so good to us when we are so slow to learn. Shake us awake today, our Father, with the realization that you delight in us as your sons and daughters. And may we seek ways to do the same with ours. Thank you for Jesus and giving us your very own Son of all things, your one and only Son. Today we sit in the shadow of the cross, and at the foot of that cross all ground is level. There's no rank, There's no position, there's no stratum of economic significance. We're all just sinners, saved by the grace of God in His blessed name. Amen.
The preceding message, Delighting in Your Children, was copyrighted in 2012, and the sound recording was copyrighted in 2017 by Charles R. Swindoll, Inc. All rights are reserved worldwide. Duplication of copyrighted material for commercial use is strictly prohibited.